Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Nuraina binti Shakir. My metric number is 1231902. Today I will present my topic, the expansion of Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya. Firstly, I will explain the introduction. Christian missionary movement expanded significantly in Malaya during the British colonial period, particularly from the 19th century onwards as part of wider Western influence in Southeast Asia. According to Han in 1996, this expansion was closely linked to the broader spread of Western influence throughout the region. These missionary groups established church, mission schools, and hospitals, mainly in urban centers and strategic locations to reach local communities. The main objective of missionaries was to spread Christianity, but at the same time, they also introduced Western-style education and values. This point is supported by Mazin Makim in 2003, who highlighted that missionary activities involve both religious propagation and the introduction of Western educational and cultural values. Their development was closely connected to the colonial administration and Western perception of Eastern societies during that period. Now, I will explain the research question. First, what is the background of Christian missionary movement in colonial Malaya? Second, what were the roles and function of Christian missionary movement in Malayan society? Third, what factors contributed to the expansion of Christian missionary movement during the colonial period? For the research objective, firstly, to analyze the background Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya. Second, to analyze the roles and function of Christian missionary movement in Malayan society. Third, to identify the factors that contributed to the expansion of Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya. Next is problem statement. The expansion of Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya was not limited to spreading Christianity. Missionaries also established schools, hospitals, and welfare institutions that influenced local society and introduced Western cultural values. According to Mazin Makim 2003, the growth of missionary institutions has not been fully explored in academic discussion. Therefore, this study aims to examine the factors that contributed to the expansion of Christian missionary movement in colonial Malaya more clearly and systematically. Next is research methodology. This study adopts a qualitative approach using a historical research design to examine the expansion of Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya. This approach is suitable because it allows the study to explore historical events and development in depth. The study relies on secondary sources such as journals and academic articles related to missionary activities. These sources provide relevant information and evidence for the research. Content analysis is used to identify key themes including missionary expansion, institutional development, and contributing factors. This method helps to organize and interpret the collected data systematically. The focus of the study is on the colonial period in Malaya to understand the historical development of missionary movement and their influence on society. This enables the study to examine how missionary activities evolve and shape the social landscape during that period. Next, I will explain the background of Christian missionary movement in colonial Malaya. Christian missionaries first arrived in Malaya during the early period of British colonial expansion in the 19th century. Their arrival marked the beginning of organized missionary efforts in the region. The main missionary groups included Catholic, Anglican, and Methodist missions, with each group operating in different regions and serving various communities throughout Malaya. Their activities developed alongside British colonial administration and the growth of towns and urban centers in Malaya. As colonial influence expanded, missionary work also became more widespread. Early mission institutions such as church and schools become the foundation for the long-term presence of missionary movements. These institutions play an important role in maintaining missionary activities and attracting local communities. Then, missionary expansion was closely linked to the establishment of colonial infrastructure, which facilitated access to both urban and rural populations. Improved transportation and communication networks enabled missionaries to reach a large number of people. In addition, the growth of missionary activities was influenced by social needs such as education and healthcare provision within colonial society. Through school and medical services, missionaries were able to strengthen their presence and influence in local communities. Mission school became one of the most significant channels for missionary outreach as they provided education to local communities while promoting Christian values and teachings. Furthermore, missionary organizations established extensive network of church, schools, and welfare institutions which contributed to their long-term presence and influence within colonial society. Now, I will explain the roles and function of Christian missionary movement in Malayan society. Missionaries play an important role in education by establishing schools that provided formal learning and English language education. These schools offer educational opportunities to local communities and help increase literacy levels. In addition, English language education enables students to acquire skills and knowledge that were valuable for employment and social mobility during the colonial period. They also contributed to healthcare services by setting up hospitals and clinics that serve both urban and rural communities. These medical institutions provide treatment for various illnesses and improve access to healthcare, particularly in areas where such services were limited. As a result, missionary healthcare initiatives contributed to the overall well-being of the population. Next, welfare activities such as assisting orphans, the poor, and vulnerable groups were also part of their social contribution. Missionary organizations often provided food, shelter, financial assistance, and the basic necessities to those in need. This effort helped address social challenges and offered support to individuals facing difficult circumstances. Overall, this institution helped improve social development and living standards in colonial Malaya through their contribution to education, healthcare, and welfare. Missionary organizations play a significant role in shaping community development and enhancing the quality of life for many people during the colonial era. Next, I will explain the identify the factors that contributed to the expansion of Christian missionary movement during colonial rule in Malaya. First, the expansion of missionary movement was supported by the stability and administrative system of British colonial rule in Malaya. The colonial government created a relatively stable political environment that allowed missionary organizations to operate more freely. This stability enabled missionaries to establish institutions, conduct religious activities, and expand their work without facing major disruptions. As British influence grew, mission activities also became more organized and widespread throughout the country. Secondly, financial and organizational support from European missionary societies play an important role in sustaining their long-term activities. Many missionary organizations receive funding, manpower, and resources from church and religious societies based in Europe. This support allowed them to build schools, church, hospitals, and welfare centers, as well as train missionaries who were sent to serve in Malaya. Without such support, it would have been difficult for missionary movement to maintain and expand their activities over a long period. Another important factor was the improvement of transportation and communication system, which allowed missionaries to reach wider areas across Malaya more effectively. The development of roads, railways, ports, and postal services during the colonial period made travel and communication much easier. As a result, missionaries were able to extend their activities beyond major towns and reach rural communities that had previously been difficult to access. Finally, the establishment of mission schools, church, and hospital increased their visibility and influence within local society. These institutions provided valuable services such as education, healthcare, and welfare assistance, which attracted many members of the local population. Through this institution, missionaries were able to build stronger relationships with local communities and establish a lasting presence in Malaya. In conclusion, Christian missionary movement expanded significantly during the British colonial period in Malaya through various religious and social institutions. They established church, school, and hospital that helped strengthen their presence in local communities. Their expansion was supported by colonial stability, financial aid from Europe, and infrastructure development. These factors enable missionaries to carry out their activities more effectively and reach a wider population. Missionaries play an important role in education, healthcare, and welfare services in local communities. Through these services, they contributed to the well-being and development of society. Overall, this movement had a lasting impact on the social development of colonial Malaya. Their contribution continued to influence local communities throughout the colonial period. Thank you.